No, okay, people, questions from your intensive debate groups where you ripped it to pieces and came up with all these questions. Somebody, questions? Effie's got a question behind. Oh, you've got a question.
Yeah,
Good,
I do
sweetheart.
have a question.
Go, go.
How can we identify without disempowering ourselves or potentiating any negative karma?
Identify what?
Identify, well, the example you used was the fisherman. The fisherman calls himself a fisherman, or the dentist would call himself a dentist. How can we identify without potentiating any negative karma?
Oh, okay, that's to do with your motivation. We'll go into that. That's perfect. Okay. But in general, okay. Okay, no, I can answer now. There are two things. In the very basic stages of practice, the fundamental point is don't harm others, okay? Do not harm others. Don't, with your body and speech, don't lie, don't kill, don't steal, don't badmouth, don't... It's sort of fairly obvious in a broad sense what harms others. And so from the point of view of who you are, you'd be in big trouble if you define yourself as a fisherman, wouldn't you? Because you're harming others. So if you can go to define yourself in ordinary conventional sense, who am I, what's my job, you do something that at least doesn't harm, even better, that would benefit others, isn't it? That's the first thing. But then more than that, even more, and that's really, and I'm going to talk about this, more than just merely doing a job that doesn't harm others, that's not enough. You've got to, okay, that's not enough virtue in that. You've got to then have a very positive, altruistic motivation for doing it. Then whatever you do, whether it's washing the toilets or making $100 million or being a mother or being a doctor, it will be powerfully beneficial in the short and the long term. And I'll talk about the role that motivation plays. Do you understand the answer? Okay. So we can talk about that more. Go on, someone else?
Our group wanted to know how reciting the Sangata Sutra
Yeah.
prevents us or even animals from being reborn in a lower realm.
I don't know.
And also, what happens to the karmic seeds? Are they permanently destroyed?
Who, what?
Karmic seeds, when you purify, are they permanently destroyed? And how do you know when that happens through purification?
Don't ask me about that either. These are too subtle. In general, the point about the first one, what's the benefit of reciting words that have come from the Buddha, for example? What's the benefit of reciting anything? Well, the more we understand how every thought and word and action leaves a seed in the mind, which is the meaning of karma, and then the more we understand how some words and actions are more potent and more powerful in their nature, especially when they're to do with enlightened beings and things to do with benefiting beings' minds, then the more the answer to that makes sense, which is that you're leaving imprints in your mind. If you say the word, I mean, I've heard Lama Zopa say, just to say the name Buddha, very beneficial. Leaves powerful imprint in your mind and connects you with holy beings. If a Buddha is a person who is a fully developed being who benefits others, then you having a connection with that kind of person, thank you very much, that's handy from life to life. So that's, in that sense, it's beneficial. And then saying sutras and mantras and things that are connected to compassion, because of the history of all those words, building up this energy connected to holy beings, you leave a karmic connection with that in your own mind, and it helps you transform your mind. I mean, it's not too esoteric, I think, if you think it through like that. And the second one, no, you do not uproot negative seeds in the mind when you do purification until you've realized emptiness. That's when you finally cut the root, but you prevent them from growing. You sort of burn them so they can't grow so quickly. That's what you do when you purify, and we'll talk about that too, in more detail. Yeah. Someone else would like to ask something from your discussion. But these, how can you discuss all these? We haven't discussed all this yet. You're supposed to be discussing what I talked about. So.
We had two issues, and
Okay.
I guess you can decide which one you want to
Go
talk
down.
about, or both.
Yes.
One of them was we were talking how it seems so unscientific to have belief in objects, such as Buddhas, Tankas, relics.
Okay.
And then the other, I think, issue that came up was what proof do we have of rebirth and reincarnation, and is there a difference between the two?
Okay, well, they all fit together, don't they? Well, first of all, no one's asking you to believe anything. That's a fact. so, and then okay, so define scientific.
I'm not sure because we were speaking scientific.
Okay, in general, people, define scientific, please. Okay. That you can prove it, verify it. Okay, replicate it. There you go. Well, that's Buddha's deal. So, in order to see how, in order to, because the point is this, Buddha would say that if it exists, if it's real, whatever it is that you're positing, it must be able to be known by your mind, finally. By definition, if it can't be cognized, it doesn't exist, finally. So, in order to understand, therefore, how you verify every single thing that Buddha says, when you think about something called reincarnation, you know that isn't something you can see with your eyes, isn't it? And we know by looking into our own minds that most of us don't have the capability of remembering a past life. But like I said, please remember that you don't have the capability of remembering most of today. You accept that, don't you? Do you accept that you don't remember every single second of today? Now, does that means you can't verify that at 7:04 this morning you existed, but you can deduce that you existed because you understand how things work. Are you seeing my point? Like last night, you don't remember a single thing, but does that prove it doesn't exist because you don't remember it? I mean, but you all say, oh, I exist. Of course I do, because you're jumping over too many conclusions there. So you can make various logical deductions, can't you? People, can't you? Yeah. You can make a logical deduction because you understand how mind works. And you can prove, you can say to yourself, the fact that I exist now and the fact that I existed at 11 o'clock last night, even though I don't remember anything that happened in between, I can deduce that I was existing in between that period. You could say that, couldn't you? That's reasonable enough. Well, okay, so then here, in order to verify what Buddha is saying, remember I said before, I gave you the beginnings of the answer. Buddha is asserting that consciousness is not merely your brain and it's not just conceptual. That we've got subtler levels of consciousness. Remember the subtle consciousness business, remember? And as I said, remember, through utilising his very skillful techniques that have been around for thousands of years, you can develop what's called single-pointed concentration. When you've got that, you've accessed a more refined level, which in its nature doesn't depend upon the brain and the body for its existence. Remember I said that? Remember? And that level of mind, when you've accessed it, has the capability of cognizing, which is the job of mind, cognizing phenomena that cannot be cognized by the senses and by the gross level of mind. That is to say, the past and the future and the minds of others and so forth. Did you remember me saying that, people? You don't. You're not saying yes or no. You don't remember me saying that? Okay, well, this is why you have to have a notebook. Because if this was cooking class, you'd be in trouble if you couldn't go home and replicate the recipe, isn't it? No, I know. No, we'll have to memorise it all. This is why. Because everything here I'm giving is like technical things, not just like meant to be a nice feeling or an unhappy feeling. It's meant to be, So anyway, so if you take all that as a hypothesis, then that's how you prove it. You get single-pointed concentration. You access your subtle level of mind, and then you can then prove from your own direct experience that past lives exist. And if you do get that single point of concentration, which is what he says you can do, and then you can look with your mind and see there's no such thing as a past life. Hey, Buddha, you're wrong. So, of course, goodbye, Buddha. See you later, mate. Thanks for wasting my time. So it's up to all of us. But even as His Holiness said in San Francisco earlier this year, the same question about reincarnation, he said that's easy enough. You can prove that logically. You can prove it logically. So what that means is you take as a hypothesis that mind is not physical. It has to have a non-physical cause, which is the moment-by-moment thing. And then as soon as you, like we've discussed already, even just taking it as a hypothesis, if it is true that your consciousness is this continuity of mental moments, this thought, this moment of my mind coming into existence independence upon a previous, you track it back to the first second, then you have no choice but to go to a previous moment before conception. You just have no choice. You've got to go there if you're being rigorous in your logic. So you just simply have to learn to access your mind so then you can see that that's true. It's all there. The methods are all there. Buddha gives us all these methods. So it's up to us. But like anything, the first step has to be intellectual. You can't possibly prove absolutely that the recipe is correct until you've tasted the cake. Right? It's true, isn't it? So you've got to think about the recipe first. You've got to know what is the function of eggs and flour and this and that. And and it's pretty quick to prove all this, but you've got to do it. But what we tend to say is, oh, it's scientific. Excuse me, whose science is it? I haven't checked that E equals mc squared. Mr. Einstein has. But because we think he is a scientist, we say, oh, it's scientific. Well, the Buddha's scientific too. He knows it, but until I know it, I can't say it's true. So that's up to us. And this is not what we think spiritual practice is about, but this is the Buddha's approach. It's all very fine to believe that 1 and 1 is 2. You can even help somebody else by giving them the right answer. But if you start getting a bit complicated, it's not helpful just to believe it. You've got to understand it. You've got to verify it. You've got to make it your own knowledge. Well, that's the same here. Same. Buddha didn't use the word scientific. It's, look, another Greek word that he didn't use because they spoke Pali back then or whatever they spoke, But this is the Buddhist approach. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I did remember that.
Well, that's that part, and that's somebody else here. But the other one about the tankas in business, yes. No one's asking you to believe anything, for a start, first point. Second point, what is the value of having a picture of the Buddha? In other words, that's the real question, isn't it? No. Believe, nothing to do with it. Homage, nothing to do with it. Respect, even. If you have... Okay, what is the Buddha, roughly speaking? What's enlightened mind, roughly speaking? Mm-hmm. Fully developed in all the positive and useful to others, kind of can be beneficial to others, and that you can become that. Okay. So then if you're trying to be a cyclist, wouldn't it help you to have a picture of Lance Armstrong up on your wall to remind you every now and again what you're trying to become? Wouldn't it? And wouldn't it help you to go off to one of them, a class of Lance Armstrong and get his instructions? Okay, same here, dear. Nothing special. Just that they don't, you don't go do prostrations to Lance Armstrong. That's all. Because it's just a very elaborate way of showing respect to somebody. We shake hands, Well, these Tibetans bonk their heads on the ground 3 times. I mean, it's okay. It's a bit elaborate. It is cultural, I agree, but it's... So in other words, the bottom line is, if any of this stuff doesn't have a meaning finally, if it is just merely ritual, then it is absurd and you should get your money back. Go to the office, tell Eric you want your money back, you've been conned. I'm serious now. If in cooking class you were given a bunch of things to make, to put into your recipe just because it sounds nice, excuse me, how revolting. You don't put 6 lemons in your chocolate cake because it sounds nice. You do it because it works. So you can't possibly accept everything you hear if this were Einstein telling us about E equals mc squared. But you've got to check on his validity. You've got to see if he is known as a reasonable person. You've got to put it back on the back burner and start where you are. So if you don't even know that 1 and 1 is 2 as yet, you've got a while to go before you can get your head around E equals mc squared. But you've got to start where you are, and then you keep moving towards the verification of that one. And every step of the way. I mean, Tsongkhapa, the 14th century Tibetan Lama whose lineage, whose style of teachings our Lamas teach, and this is the teachings what I'm speaking from, right? He says there is no contradiction between scripture and practice. Well, that's saying there is no contradiction between a recipe and the cake. Meaning, if it's in the recipe, it has to lead to the cake. If it doesn't, then it's useless. Put it in the bin. This is unbelievably important. And again, it's not how we think about spiritual practice. We think spiritual is about ritual and just doing it because somebody said you should, and just believing it, and fear and guilt and shame and people running the show up from up in the sky, It's very superstitious to think like this. It's not like that. The Buddha's view is not like that. Anyone else? Where are you? Okay. Yes, Claire.
Okay, so how you're saying that I understand that consciousness is say different than our physical body, right? They're separate, different than our mind.
Your mind is your consciousness. Right.
Yeah. Right, but okay, same as your mind, but not
your body, not your brain, not your nose, not your eyelashes, not your pee-pee, not your caca, not your vomit, not your blood, not your heart, not your lungs, not your bones, not your toenails.
Well, that answers that question.
Thank you.
So my other question is you said that when we assume that that there are parts of our lives that we don't remember, but we can remember beyond that, and so we assume that we existed in those times in between, and so then that should explain to us that
No.
a previous life.
No, it doesn't. That I wasn't
existed?
using. No, I was simply using the example. If you don't, just because you don't remember it, doesn't mean it's not existing.
But that was that was an example of a proof, right?
That was an example. I gave one example to show that just because you don't remember it doesn't mean it doesn't
Right.
exist.
Okay, I understand that.
That's all.
And then you said so that it exists in between those times, and I guess I just need another example of why it exists, because I'm not seeing
exists?
consciousness
Why what exists?
and reincarnation, because
you have to take as a view, you have to take as this hypothesis that your mind, Claire's consciousness, is this river of mental moments.
But like, okay, I don't have
Yeah.
anything to compare it to, because I look at my physical body, and my physical body starts out in a place, and I'm an infant, and it matures, and then
That's right.
it dies, right?
That's right.
And I see my spiritual, my mind, my consciousness as going through somewhat of the same process. So then, to me,
Process meaning what?
like it starts out sort of infantile,
Yeah.
and then it grows as well. So why
you
wouldn't
mean
it?
That's, okay, wait, first of all, right there, stop.
Yeah.
You think that's the normal thing with the world? You think we just keep getting better as we get older? What a
Not
wonderful
necessarily,
world. Well,
but
there you
I mean,
go. Okay,
I'm
then,
speaking
so-
hopefully. But
no,
but
no,
with
no,
our-
wait a minute. Well, just no. Hey, wait,
Yeah.
stop there. You
Okay.
cannot even begin to use the same example about mind when you can see even one example of one person who begins as with sort of fairly reasonable, then becomes a mass murderer and kills and lies and steals and goes insane. You cannot just say, oh yeah, but hopefully. That's not enough to say something. Excuse me. Mind is not like the body in the sense that it starts small and gets bigger and then fades away.
Okay.
Well, then,
but
okay,
then
so don't use that example. So then
Okay,
your
so
body
when
goes
I-
up, it gets bigger and then gets yucky and old and wrinkled and dies. So then, go on.
Right. So
Then-
then I guess I'm looking for some sort of reason to believe in reincarnation, because I
No, not
don't
reason to believe,
see-
reason to think about how it could be possible.
Okay.
This
well,
is
that too.
Okay. Well, that's the point.
Right. So I'm
Not
I'm
believe. I don't want you to
asking
believe.
Okay. So then not
okay.
believe. But
Again, I'll repeat what I've said already.
Yeah.
I think the things to think about
Uh-huh.
that will help us see how it could be possible
Mm-hmm.
have to be that thoughts inside your mind,
Mm-hmm.
the feelings inside your mind, instinct, intuition, thoughts, feelings, emotions, all this stuff which is your mind,
Mm-hmm.
right? To think what is the cause of this moment of anger? Okay, what is the cause of this moment of anger in your mind? What would be the main cause, do you think? What would be the main cause of this moment of anger popping up in your mind? What would be the cause?
Just like any moment of anger.
Say 3 minutes ago you got angry, and we all agree there was a moment of anger in Claire's mind. What would be the main cause of that moment of anger? Do you accept that something, if it exists, has to have a cause? If this bottle exists, if you can say there is a bottle, in order to replicate this bottle, we need
Right.
to understand all the causes of it so we can do it again. We need to know how to make it, don't we? Would you agree that if there is something existing, it has to have some causes?
Right. But I
No,
do
one
believe
step
that.
at a time, Claire.
Mhm.
Would you
Yeah.
agree with that?
Yes.
So if you looked at this bottle, you'd have to understand its character and its nature first,
Right.
before you can then go backwards. Let's say there's all the bottle theories have all lost, and you've got to work it out for yourself. You've got to first establish what this matter is, and then you've got to come to the conclusion that it's plastic.
Right.
This is the thinking you have to do. Then you can understand what would cause that. In other words, where does plastic come from? What is it? What do you have to put together to get plastic? Wouldn't you agree that you have to do that? So the crucial thing is you have to establish what its current nature is.
Right.
So here we're saying it is plastic.
Right.
So then you break it down, you unpack it, and then you can go back and go back and back, and then you'll be able to come up with the recipe of how to make a bottle, which is what are the causes of the bottle. And you can see many things have to come together to produce a bottle. You would agree with this, would you
Yeah.
not? So in general, would you agree that if anything exists, it's got to be it's made up of many things like that? Would you agree with this?
Okay. Yes.
Anything at all? That if it exists, it just didn't come out of the sky like that.
Right. I agree.
Okay, good. So now the thing we're discussing is a moment of anger. It's a thing that does exist. Would you agree with that?
Right. Yes.
Okay, so we have to analyse it in the same way. What is a moment of anger? Because this is the way you have to think to come to these answers. So right now, in the West, we will say it's a chemical reaction, or it's because of Rochelle punching you in the nose, or because of your parents have the DNA. We have all these answers, don't we? The Buddhist answer would say they're all some of the external conditions. There's some external conditions, but they're not the main thing. Because Buddha would assert that a moment of anger is a mental phenomenon, and he would assert that the mental phenomena, mind, is not physical. So the punch, the DNA, the genes, the chemicals, the weather, all these other things are all factors. But finally, the actual character of what mind is something that isn't physical.
Right.
So if you can take it as at least a hypothesis now, and if we can establish that anger is a moment, is a mental thing, then we have to assert that a thing similar to that has to be the cause of it. So what obviously would be the cause of a moment of anger?
Well,
answer that question.
So it would be your...
A previous moment of anger.
Right.
One step, Claire.
Yeah,
you've
no,
gotta
I'm with
follow
you. I am with you.
Keep following the thinking through. Okay, now. What is the cause of that moment of anger?
Right, another moment of
And
anger.
then what would be the cause of that moment of anger?
Right.
And go back to where would you end up with, if you keep tracking this back very rigorously, very precisely, where would you end up?
Maybe with somebody else's moment of anger.
Claire. No, because the more you look at how anger is a personal experience of yours in your mind, which is, listen carefully,
I am.
which is not physical. Listen carefully.
Yeah.
Which is not physical. It is a totally personal thing. It is yours.
It's
I
have the potential for it, right?
You're not listening. It is
I am
your
listening.
moment of anger. I also could have anger in my mind, but that's my moment of anger. Now listen carefully to this. Let's use another example of a mental phenomenon in your mind. Let's say you are good at music. Let's say. Now, we know your hands are involved when they go on the piano, don't we? But there's no way they could do this business if it wasn't in your mind. You'd have to have the intelligence, the ability to hear that music, to put it together in your mind, understand it, so you can then put it in the fingers. Wouldn't you agree? So that's mental. So music, actually, the capacity for music in you is in your mind, in your mental. It can be, it exists in dependence upon the piano, your fingers, a decent brain, but the music is mental. The capacity for music or love or anger or kindness or hate is mental, which we're positing here is not physical. So the cause of your capacity for playing, for music, has to be a previous moment of that capacity for music in your mind. So let's say Rochelle is good at music and she tries to teach you her music. If you don't have capacity for your music, she can tell you about music until the cows come home. It won't activate anything in you because it's not in you. So finally, your mind is yours. It can be activated by somebody else's anger or music, but you can't inject anger into you like a substance. It's got to be in you. If you don't understand, if you're tone deaf, hearing music, having a Steinway piano, every best music teacher lining up, it won't help because you don't have the capacity in your mind. Your mind is uniquely, absolutely yours, coming from your experience. So this moment of anger, or this moment of goodness, or this moment of music, the main cause of it is the previous moment existing in the same mind.
So
now, wait, okay. I haven't finished.
Okay.
You track it like this. So you keep tracking that back. And then we want always, what is the cause? So you go back to a previous moment. And then you're 3, and then you're 2, and then you're 1, and you keep saying the same thing. And then you're in the womb, and you keep saying the same thing, because you can go nowhere else but a previous moment of that mind. You get back to the first second of conception. You have nowhere to go but a previous moment of that mind, which is not physical. And that was before you were a twinkle in your mummy's eye. This is the only way you can think this through and try to see how, as a hypothesis, it works. It is reasonable.
So are you saying...
That's how you think about beginningless mind. That's how you think about, how it's not physical. You put these things together. You think like that.
So are you saying that then there are some people who don't have that innate anger? Like if it can't be passed from one person to the other, then you're saying that there are some people who, no matter how many things happen to them, they may not experience anger.
Of course, because they've given it up. Of course, that's what enlightenment is. When you've burned the seed of anger in your mind, people can cut your body into a piece one step at a time and you won't get angry, baby. It is really simple, of course. That's the whole point the Buddha's saying. Of course, absolutely. That's the point. Yep, that's right.
Okay, well...
That's right, and I can give you lots of examples. There's a Tibetan friend of... I mean, have you noticed the Dalai Lama, by the way? Have you ever read any of his books or heard about him?
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard about... Do you know about his history a bit, about the Tibetans? A little bit.
Yeah.
Just broadly speaking. They've had a bit of suffering. The
I saw a
communist
movie.
Chinese have been bombing their country and destroying the monasteries and killing 1.5 million of the 6 million people, and they're still coming out into exile, and they've got monks and nuns and people in prison, and they torture them, and they sexually abuse them, and they... I mean, you've heard about these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And have you ever heard the Dalai Lama talk or seen him talk?
Yes.
Okay, and everybody who's known him and seen him for 50 years now would all say he has not even a skerrick of anger. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's an example. A Tibetan monk friend of mine who lives around San Francisco, he was tortured in 1987 when he was demonstrating. And he was then, then he escaped, and then his brother got murdered, and his father got murdered, and his friend had his head blown off, and all these suffering things happened. And he was telling me about all this. And I said, do you ever get angry? And he laughed. He said, angry? What for? Some people don't get angry because they removed it from their minds. They've done the work. This is what Buddha's saying. We don't notice things like this in the West because we don't ever think it's possible, so we just glaze over it. I know ordinary people. I remember watching interviews with the Columbine parents, the kids who were murdered, Mm-hmm. And one father, full of rage, wanted the children to burn in hell forever and he would never forgive them. It was obvious by his own words and his face he was full of rage. So we go, oh, that's normal. Mm-hmm. But excuse me, the woman next to him, the way she spoke, she showed she didn't have anger. It wasn't kind of mysterious. She said, I'm not angry. I do forgive them. I have compassion for him and the parents. So we just think that's a bit odd in the West, but because we assume the anger's normal. So we don't really hear even ordinary everyday examples. I remember hearing about in Boston last year, a little girl who was shot by some gangster and was paralysed from her neck down, or something like that, in a wheelchair, 5 years old, in the court. Everybody's in tears when she's talking with love and kindness. And then how the mother gave evidence and said, I never had one bad word sent against this boy in my house, even though the one he's... I mean, there are people all the time, every day in our lives we can hear who are not angry in the face of unbelievable abuse. But we don't kind of hear it in the West because we're so obsessed with believing, because it reinforces our own, that it's normal and it's real and it comes from other people harming us. We just don't hear the examples staring us in our face.
So, in following that line of thinking, because anger, so if you can get rid of this anger,
yeah,
if you can destroy these seeds,
yes, that's right,
and then you can be born without anger,
that's right,
like the Dalai Lama,
yes,
and it's because of a previous life, you at some point killed those seeds.
You pulled them out. You stop thinking. This is where now we're getting slowly to the point of understanding how karma works, which I'm going to talk about, so it'll all come for you, and describing how finally logically, by understanding how all emotions come down to being thoughts, how because they are misconceptions, fantasy stories, like we said before, how they can therefore be removed from the mind. It's not rocket science. It's not esoteric. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah?
I'm still not totally comfortable with that line of thinking proving, rebirth.
Okay, what do you mean? Not comfortable? Which bit is not logical? Which bit's not logical?
A seed of anger exists, because you have this feeling of anger that it existed in you before, and
so you don't understand that.
It is not something that you can't learn anger. The idea that you
can't
learn.
No, you're missing the point. Then you're asserting that someone can learn something that they don't have the potential to learn. You're saying that. You know very well that if a person doesn't have the potential to learn music, this is my point. Mm-hmm. You understand that when it comes to science and math and carpentry, but this is the point. We don't get it when it comes to emotions because we have a whole different set of rules for emotions because we think everybody else does it to us. It's hard for us to hear this. That's all. It's simple. If there is the potential there, do you agree that there's got to be the potential in you to understand music for you to be receptive to teachings on music? Don't you agree with that?
Yeah.
Well, then, and you would agree, would you, that if you really were tone deaf or you had no ears, let's say you had no ears, you were deaf, you'd have to agree you couldn't learn music. Would you not agree with that?
But just because I couldn't do music doesn't
It's an
mean
example
that,
of cause and effect, Claire. I'm using
Right.
as an example of how your potential to be good at music / your potential to be good at anger
Right.
depend upon the potential in you. That's all I'm saying. That
So some
point.
people are just really bad at anger.
Because they've got the potential and because they've been doing it very well. They've practiced it to be really good at it. So like with people with music. That's all. The thing back to this is to see that the potential has to be in you in order for you to be good at anger, music, or anything else. Obviously, if you don't have ears, you can't be good at music. Obviously, if you've removed all the seeds of anger, you won't have anger. But the real point is the first one, to see how you've got to have the potential inside you. You understand it, honey, when it comes to learning anything. You can see, that's why even a person who hears music, they go, oh, wow, that's amazing, I want to learn it. Why they say that is because the music's in them.
Okay, so if you have these things that exist, let's say that anger exists and we've somehow passed it on.
No, wait, exists where?
In our
in a mind.
minds.
In a mind, okay.
Right,
If
in a
anger,
mind.
the potential for anger exists in the mind, then what? The next point.
That maybe
is-
like consciousness doesn't necessarily it doesn't reincarnate as the same consciousness that it.
No, it is the same consciousness. Yes, it has to
reincarnates
be.
as like
No, it is the same. How can it be
a
different?
more of a generalized energy instead of like
That's a
an
meaningless
identity.
concept. No, it's a meaningless concept. This is mind. We're talking a linear river of mental moments here. Nothing else. Be very practical about it. You just said something very wacko and weird and unscientific then. A generalized blah, Be rigorous. Listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a relationship between the capacity of Mozart being good at music when he was 6, between that and his potential in his mind. You track that back to the first second of conception, because that's where you'll go when you follow Mozart's mind back. And if you keep having this rigorous point that it's in his mind, the only way you can go is to a previous moment of mind before it came to his mummy's womb. You've got nowhere else to go with it. Taking this as your hypothesis, Claire.
But music, an aptitude for music is genetic, and that came from his mother.
Claire, I am
Like-
not discussing the physical model here. I am telling you the Buddhist view, and that's for you to think
Okay.
about, darling. I'm not asking you to accept it.
Well,
So
I'm
that
not-
is not the point here. Excuse me, Claire.
Yeah.
We're using a different model here for you to think about it. You can't take it from one model and pop it into the other one. You've got to take as a hypothesis that the capacity for music is not genes. It's a joke, Buddha would say, to call it genes. Excuse me, Claire, you don't have to accept this, but you have to have enough ability to think as if it were true. That's the only way you can think this one through.
I'm trying to do that.
Well, then it is not genetic. It's mind. I tried to point that out before. Using Buddha's view, it is not genetic. It's a complete joke.
I'm not saying that it is. I'm
No,
just-
excuse me, that is one approach. So we're leaving that aside for the moment. Let it be there. You're investigating a new approach here. That possibly, let's look at another model here, we are saying. Let's look at the Buddhist model, which asserts that it's not physical, that it's mind and it's uniquely mind, because mind is personal. These are the various factors you've got to remember. Then you can think it through rigorously, using these assumptions, these propositions.
Okay, I'll try to do that.
That's the way. That's the way. It can be very rigorous,
Okay.
which is what you're doing. You've got a very rigorous mind. You're great. Keep chucking, girl. Yes. Another mind over here. We need the mic for the recording. I mean, if we don't need the mic for recording, we don't need a mic for me, that's for sure.
You're wonderful. Thank you. In any case, could you comment on, you revealed a whole subterranean lake of my self-pity or victimology. So I'd like you to help me think about cleaning that up a little bit.
Yes.
Self-pity, some of which I think is subconscious, and I'm not even noticing. I'm watching.
Absolutely.
I'm watching my fear. I'm scared of stuff. I'm scared of angry people too.
Yes.
Meanwhile, I've got all this unnoticed and unprocessed low self-esteem or sadness or self-pity. I call it victimology.
That's
So
it.
if you could comment on that a little
Oh,
bit.
absolutely. You're doing great. You did very nicely already, but we can carry on very nicely. Thank you. Okay. So anybody else? That'll do for now. Let's go on then. About self-pity me. Okay. Or as in France, we were talking about it, and it was pauvre petit moi. The poor little me. Yes, go.
Okay, Venerable. So you talked even about Buddha potential and things like that. Now, if there is a moment of anger and you could trace it back to a moment of anger in the past, if you traced it far enough back, would you at some point get to the place where you had that Buddha nature? And if so, like, what brought that out? You know, like...
What's Buddha nature for you? Define it, please.
Oh, good. I wish I could remember some of these books I've read.
Well, no, excuse me, don't worry about the books. Just remember this morning. I've talked about it. I said it's exactly what it is. So you don't remember. It's very simple.
Please
okay.
repeat it.
What? Oh, so you were here this morning?
Yes.
Okay, this just shows how we don't remember things, and it's okay because it's not, it's because it is concepts. There's lots of concepts. Not criticizing. It's why, in the end, it's almost like you just got to remember it, learn the words, so you can spout them off. Like 1 and 1 is 2. Because if you'd never learned your 10 times tables, it'd be quite hard to do all your calculating, wouldn't it?
Of course.
Well, the same here. So if you've heard this stuff and you've read all these books and you've heard it and heard it and heard it, and you have, but you can't even say what it is. So that means you haven't learned the words properly. You haven't memorized them. This is what they do in the Tibetan monasteries. We think, oh, how inferior, just memorizing things by rote. Oh, no, we learn things experientially in our culture. Well, excuse me, they learn them all. They've got them in their computer. So when they start hearing the teachings, they can go, oh, yeah, there it is, line 4 of 3, page 7, there it is, and then they can start making it experiential. You've got to have the words down first. Okay, so what does Buddha mean? What's the meaning of the word? You. He has to answer.
Yeah, enlightened, free of karma and afflictions, things like that.
Okay, so that's, and what's potential mean? Or Buddha, what's potential mean?
The ability to become.
Okay, so you're telling me you have the possessing, are you telling me that you possess the ability to become a Buddha?
I would hope so.
Okay, so what the hell has it got to do with the past?
Well, the Christians talk about original
I'm not interested,
sin.
we're talking here this. You just said what you said Buddha nature is. It's the potential for you to become one.
Yes.
Okay, so what has that got to do with the past?
Very
Why did you bring it
little.
up? What was your thinking?
You were following with Claire, you were following the line of...
I'm asking you what you think your future potential has got what to do with the past. Your words. Remember your words and you asked me the question? Repeat your question. Repeat your question, sweetie.
My original question,
To me, yes, sitting here with the mic. What was your question?
something like if you followed, the first act, if you followed the act of anger...
Yep.
And you followed it back, you'd find another. And if
Right.
you did it long enough...
Yes.
Because we talked about this Buddha potential, Buddha nature,
Okay.
would you find a first act of anger? If you had the mind that could see such
what
a
has
thing.
got Buddha nature got to do with what has the potential for your future potential for you to become developed in your mind to the point of Buddhahood got to do with that question? Is my question
Okay,
to you.
may I rephrase?
Explain why you're asking the question, yeah.
May I rephrase?
Yeah, please do. I want you to.
Okay.
Yes. So rephrase.
Were we at any point pure? Was I at any point
So what does pure mean? Define pure.
Free from the afflictions and
Free
things
from
like that?
afflictions.
Yeah.
You mean the afflictions finished, gone, totally, burned, finished, no seed.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Was I ever
I'm
like that?
asking you, is that what you mean
Yes.
by pure? So you're saying pure means the mind totally free of seeds, of potentials for negativity.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think so. Yes. Yes.
So if your mind at some point, and if your mind at some point has totally achieved purity, Buddhahood, perfection, meaning it has removed all the seeds of negativity, if it has, how could you develop it again? How could you lose it? How could you lose it?
I don't believe that you could.
Well, then why'd you ask the question?
Well, because...
No, wait, one step at a time. Why? What makes you think then, if you do follow, now that you're thinking it through, that if that is what purity or Buddhahood means, the seeds have all gone, and if a seed is burned, how can it grow again? What would be the cause of it? What would be the cause of suddenly a seed of anger to occur in your mind if you've burned the seed of anger?
It could not.
Then that's the answer to your question, isn't it? So conclusion is no, you have never been pure in the past, if you're not now. So now ask your other part. So this should answer your other question. Say your other question about anger.
If I followed the anger back
Yes.
to another
Right.
moment of anger.
You keep going back like that.
Yeah.
Now be rigorous. You keep going back. And you've decided this moment of anger has to have come from a previous moment.
Yes.
You've decided that, haven't you?
Yeah.
And that's
yeah, of
logical,
course.
isn't it?
Yes.
And then you get back to conception, and you've got to go back to a moment before that, don't you?
Yes.
To that same track of mind. You agree?
Yes.
And you keep going back, and you keep coming to a moment of anger. And then you say, what is the cause of that moment of anger? And you have to say what?
The previous moment.
So then, what's your question?
If I had the mind that could go back very
Indeed,
far,
if you could keep going back, then the question would be?
would I ever find an original
And the
trigger?
answer to that question would be, based upon the analysis we just did, what
Probably
would be
not.
the answer to that question?
Probably not.
What do you mean probably?
I mean, no.
Why? Because?
Because I would always go back to a
previous
moment.
moment.
Yes.
Exactly. So by thinking like this, which you've known about how many years, and I'll have to spoon feed you to do it, you come to your own answers, don't you?
Yes, Venerable.
That's right. Well
Thank
done.
you so much.
Do you see my point? This
Yes.
is how rigorous we have to be, but we're not. We're intellectually bone lazy. We love to read books and think about it. Oh, wow, far out, the Dalai Lama is so amazing. He must be a Buddha. Oh, wow, amazing. What's Buddha nature? Oh, I don't know. Put your money where your mouth is, baby. Memorize your teachings. Then you can give all the answers. And then you slowly put flesh on those answers and you discover the reality of them. It's like math.
I don't know math.
Well, it's like cooking or cleaning or learning anything you've learned. Wiping your bottom. You've learned to do that nicely, you know. Start there. Okay. Anybody have any questions? Yep. Please, the mic.
What's the big deal about happiness?
Okay.
Why is happiness considered the ultimate criterion? You went through a series of examples of people like Dalai Lama, for example, who did not have anger.
Mm-hmm.
And your premise was
Yes.
that to not have anger is better than to have anger.
Yes. That's right. So you want to know what is it about
What is
anger
that-
that's not good?
What is that, on what is that premise based?
Okay.
And a lot of things flow from that premise. And a lot of other things
Absolutely.
flow from
Totally.
a lot of other things flow from the premise that
Yep.
happiness is the ultimate criterion by which everything is assessed.
The Buddha, okay, usually we maybe have to find these terms, don't we? Because Buddha's got, obviously we've got, you know, every one of us in this room would give a different definition of what happiness is and whether it's good or bad. So we've got to take Buddha's view here. That's one we're discussing, okay? So the Buddha would use the word happiness to be equivalent to the term freedom from suffering, to be equivalent to the term nirvana. And that word is a word used to refer to the mind of a person who has completely removed all the imprints, all the seeds of suffering, of neurosis, and the causes of suffering, which in Buddha's terms are the negative states of mind. They are the cause of suffering. We're about to go into detail in those. And so what he would ask us to do, not just accept that, is, like we're talking about here how, okay, is to look at our own experiences of when we're angry, jealous, depressed, fearful, anxious, all the words we sort of know in daily life. If we really look into these carefully and were to do a little survey among us, you know, including ourselves with other people, I don't know, maybe you would disagree, but we'd probably agree that they were the painful ones. And if we had any choice, we'd rather not be jealous, angry, depressed, fearful, paranoid, lonely, all these other things. And so all he's saying is they are in the nature of suffering. And now following those states of mind perpetuate our suffering. And that if we analyse it carefully, we would see we'd prefer to feel happy and funny and low-key and relaxed and easygoing and courageous and brave and compassionate and kind and wise. So we've got to ask ourselves those questions. So happiness, the Buddha uses it to refer to the presence of positive states of mind. He would say if we look into our own minds, that's when we feel whole, complete, fulfilled, relaxed, easygoing, and connected to others and can function appropriately and well on this earth and not make a mess. That's his way of saying it, or my way of saying what he says.
And are we, because I am so familiar with unpleasant states of mind, is that the seat of their own? I almost enjoy them. I know them.
No, there you go.
They're
You've hit it on the head. That's it. You've hit it on the head. We do. So that's what I want to go into a bit more here now, the way these states of mind function, and how then linking it to this Buddhist philosophical view of karma, which is the way we come into life and the nature of mind and how it works and how we produce our own suffering and our own happiness and how we're not the products of other beings. I wanted to go into all that now.
That would be good.
Okay.
Thus far, what I've learned is that I'm completely freaking insane.
That's what Buddha would say. He just uses polite words for it.
And so, now what?
No, that's it. And well, there you go. That's it. Okay, well, let's go into it. Thank you so very much. Okay. It's a very interesting group. Okay, so now let's keep remembering these are just Buddha's views. We don't have to believe them. We're trying to look at them with our intelligent hat on. We have to remove our other views away in order to get space in our head for them because they contradict so many things that we assume are the truth, okay? So, continuing then. If we look at this Four Noble Truths, which is what the stuff that Buddha expressed, taught, if you like, in his first time he taught, after he'd spent all these years of leaving his family, going off and going at all these different gurus and Hindu people and going beyond them and going and doing his own stuff in order to find the truth, to find truth. He was looking for happiness and truth, okay? And so they say that he sat under this tree and whatever the stories are, right? And he finally kind of, all the pennies dropped and then he got it and then he went off and started teaching. And so the first one he gave was this Four Noble Truths business, okay? So the third one, as I've said already, is his, and they're taught in the context of suffering. The third one is him saying, you know what, folks, you can be free of it. Flip it over, and he's saying, you know what, you can become stably happy. So we've got to see, as I said, we define those terms. We just said it a little bit here. But in order to understand, even just seeing it in terms of freedom from suffering, if it's true that we can be, and it's kind of, sounds pretty hopeful, thank you, Buddha, we better know what suffering is. We better all be on the same page. So that's the first noble truth. And my thought is always, I'd like to say the third first, because if we think all about what suffering is, and we go into great detail about the three kinds of suffering, and then you go to the second one, which is the causes, and you rub your nose in it even further, and you get all the causes of suffering, you want to kill yourself before you get to the third one, where he finally tells you, well, you know what, babe, you can be free of it. So I think it's nicer to hear that first, so it gives us some courage, because we're all such self-pity, misery queens. It's too depressing for us, We we know already life is suffering. Buddha, give us a break, Do you understand my point here? So in other words, it's sort of like you open up the hood. Yeah, I'm in a hood country, aren't I? Not the bonnet country. I've been in a bonnet country recently. Now I'm in a hood country. Okay. You open up the hood of your car, let's say, and it doesn't work. So then you've got to analyse really accurately all the things that are wrong. The carburetor and the brakes and this and the oil and it's rusty and it's that. I mean, you don't want to kick it in the heap before you're finished, isn't it? But then you've got to go to the next step. Now what are the causes of it? And then the next one is you can be free of it. But my feeling is it makes sense if you already know your car has got potential to work when you open the hood, because it gives you the courage then to look for the problems. Why do you want to look for the problems? How do you feel when you find the problems? You cheer, don't you? Because now you can say, great, now I can fix it. So you look at first what the problem is. Then you have to look at what causes it. Because you're going to locate the problem. But if you don't know what causes it, you're never going to solve it. And as soon as you find as soon as you locate accurately the cause of something, and I'm again being rigorous and precise here, we need to be, then I can solve the problem. It's so obvious. If you can't locate the disease in your body, and then secondly you can't locate the cause, how can you solve it? It's just common sense. So he says in the third one, you know what, people, you can be free of suffering. You can be fully developed in happiness. And anyway, he says, mind is in its nature pure, hasn't always been, is not, doesn't mean it has been pure. This is the Christian teaching. This is interesting, and maybe that was what he was going to say. And I remember speaking to a Catholic priest recently about this. He said, yes, it is a bit of a thing we do discuss. And I said, the Buddhists have a big problem with saying, God made you perfect, and then you lost it. You can't be perfect and then stop being perfect. It just doesn't work, You can't be an extension of God, which is meant to be perfection, and then become imperfect. It's just bizarre. So, we can go more into all these things. So, if it is true, and we're taking Buddha on his word here, at least for the moment, you can be free of suffering. I mean, my goodness, thank you very much. I'd like to be happy. I'd like to be stably capable of feeling content and wise and loving and compassionate no matter what happens. I would really like to be that. Thank you. That's very tasty. So he says in order to, so we can be free of it. That's kind of encouraging. Now let's look at what he says suffering is. And already this is something different for us. He's got three kinds of suffering, the way he articulates what suffering is. The first kind is what we mean by suffering. And roughly speaking, we mentioned last night, it's really the broadest way of saying it and not being cruel to us. It's the stuff that we get that we don't want. And that can include the most appalling, like being bombed, all the way down to the red light. You know, when the stuff that happens that we don't want, that's what we mean by suffering. And this first kind, and he calls it the suffering of suffering, like in-your-face suffering, you know. And that's about all we think of as suffering. And so we spend our lives trying to avoid that one. And so that we can assume, we can deduce. Okay, so the second kind of suffering is a bit depressing initially because it's what we call happiness. So to really understand this, and we're going to go into this now, to understand this, we need to go to the second noble truth, which is the causes of suffering, and look at it in that context to really see what Buddha's saying here. So the second kind, he calls it simply the suffering of change. Meaning the happiness that we get now, the happiness that we call happiness, and we gave the example of the gorgeous body and the delicious cake, doesn't last. It turns into the gross kind of suffering. So you have the suffering of an empty stomach, which is called suffering, the first kind. So then you try to alleviate it by getting what you want, which is called the cake, which is what we call the cause of happiness. You get the cake and you're waiting for the happiness to come. It's kind of triggering pleasure, but it's not enough. We want more. We haven't kind of got, click, happiness has come yet. That's why we have a second mouthful and a third and then a second piece and a third piece. Constantly looking, waiting for that happiness to click in where we can go, wow, that's amazing. You know, I'm content now. But what happens? Suddenly, like a dream, it's all gone, and before you know it, you're feeling stuffed. You've overeaten. If the happiness happened, you missed it, because now it has turned into the gross suffering of the suffering of a full stomach and of imminent vomiting if you keep eating it. Now, this little example is something we all know. It's not moralistic, it's not being mean, it is a description of what we know. It's not secret. But what we go is, yeah, well, we know that, Robina, but that's how life is, we'll say. And Buddha says, that's my point. You're so used to this, you don't ever question, maybe it can be another way. We're brainwashed into thinking that's what happiness is. It's about the best we can get. So in order to understand that kind of suffering, which we mean by happiness, we need to look into more deeply the causes of it, which is the second noble truth, which brings us to understanding back to our mind, because this is the key. So far so good, people? Okay, now let's look at the second noble truth. The third type of suffering, by the way, is called all-pervasive suffering, and that's even more abstract. But I'll touch upon it every now and again. It's the second one I'm concerned with. Because this is getting into the nitty-gritty of Buddha's very precise approach to what is actually suffering, the main suffering of our lives. But it's like a honey-covered razor blade for us, you know. So let's look at the second noble truth. There are causes of suffering. I mean, like you know. Like I was just talking with Claire, if you posit anything as existing, a bottle, a mala, a piece of paper, a garden, a prayer flag, a moment of happiness, a moment of suffering, a moment of anger. You've got to point to it and label it and define it if you want to discuss it. We need to know what causes it. And in particular here, we better know what causes suffering. Because why? Because we're trying to get rid of it. Just like when you go to your doctor. You know, you're not going to say, oh, this kind of, oh, it's just sort of, it's all universal, you know. It's maybe Rochelle's cancer is why I've got cancer, and maybe it came from someone else. And they're very precise. They get their things and their little business, and they open it up, and they look at it and see the character of it and understand its nature and try to get to the bottom of it so they can solve it. We understand that. We call it science. But when it comes to happiness and suffering, we don't talk like that. When it comes to emotions, we don't talk like that. We look everywhere else but our own mind. So, okay, what are the causes of suffering? Well, for that matter, what are the causes of happiness? Because the logic applies. It's like we're talking, there's a law, you know, Buddha calls it karma, okay? The broader law, he calls karma. It's a Sanskrit word that means action, that implies reaction. It's like the dynamic thing of cause-effect, seed, fruit, action, reaction. Buddha calls the law of cause and effect, when it comes to minds and lives, karma. You could say botany is the law of karma too. It's just a word he uses to refer broadly to the law of cause and effect when it's to do with minds and lives. But broadly you could say the law of cause and effect is what he means by karma. So botany is cause and effect, isn't it? You're very clear and precise. You want a fruit. You have to know what the cause of the fruit is. You have to know what the main cause is. Then you have to know the secondary causes. And you put them all together in a very correct way, and you know fairly confidently you'll get a fruit. And as we just pointed out before, you can replicate it. Now you listen to this. This is a really interesting point. Look how ingenious we are in our culture at making things, what we call science. I mean, back in Galileo's time, or when, I don't know when it was it they moved from these ridiculous Roman numbers to the Arabic numbers and a zero, when they invented the zero. That's the beginning of our miraculous technology in genius, you know. The capacity to utilize the energy of this universe utilizing numbers. And it's conceptual. We kind of created it. We used an energy, we invented a way of thinking that enables us to use the energy of this universe. How incredible. How ingenious. We are amazing at it. Absolutely amazing. That's why we have such phenomenal products in our lives. We're absolutely ingenious at understanding laws, utilizing them, and then replicating. And we can get a flower every time when all the, you know, pretty much, isn't it? When all the conditions are right. And we can prove it's right because we can repeat it and repeat it. That's science. Buddha completely agrees. So, he says the law of cause and effect also applies to minds. So he is asserting mind is non-physical. So this is why the discussion with Claire, trying to think like that. Now we've got to get used to this, because it's not what we think. We take as an absolute assumption, as a given, as a truth, that mind is the brain. Everybody who's got any kind of vague education will know the word mind is synonymous with the word brain. Buddha disagrees. He says it's full of contradictions. All the things that we haven't found answers to. We say it's because we haven't found them yet. We mean we physicalists, you know. Well, Buddha's got a bunch of answers. He might be wrong, but you've got to find out. But he's got a bunch of answers that are consistent and coherent, and that the application of them produces the results that he says you will get, called freedom from suffering, fullness of happiness. And once you've got it, you can replicate it every time. He is saying all of this. So you better find, I mean, it's kind of interesting. No one, I think, dares tell you can do that if you use Western models. So it's interesting that he would have to say such confidence, you know, with this. Don't believe him. Check him out. So, what is karma? As I said, it's a Sanskrit word that means action, but implies reaction. So Buddha's saying he's saying every microsecond of every thought, verbal and physical actions, every thought, word and action, the body, you know, is a karma, an action. Every microsecond, you know, is a karma, an action that will leave, and using the other analogy of seeds and fruits here, will leave an imprint or a seed in the mind that will bring a fruit similar to the seed in that mind. In that mind. You put a seed in your garden, I will not get the fruit, believe me. So our Buddha says, our life, my mind, my body, what happens to me, what I see, what I meet, that's my garden. And whatever, without any law, any exception, every split second of what I see, taste, smell, hear, experience, feel, is the fruit of seeds I planted in my mind. In my mind. Everything, without exception. It's just a natural law, Buddha says, like gravity, like botany. No one invented it. It's not speculation, he is suggesting. You've got to find out. It's consistent. It works every time when you apply it. And applying it is the method for purifying your mind to the point of perfection, which is the fullness of goodness and the removal of all neurosis, Buddha is suggesting. So when he gets to the second noble truth and he says, what are the causes of suffering? Clearly, like with botany, if you had to, you know, or a microphone or a bottle, if you had to help me make a bottle, I mean, look at our technical little manuals we get just to sort of work a little kind of digital watch or a calculator or a mobile phone. It's like 47 pages of deep instructions, isn't it? Just to use it. Forget about making it. Just to use it. So, you know, if you wanted to give me an exact instructions of how to make a bottle, I think you'd have 27 volumes. Think about it carefully. How to make the plastic, how to make this, what it is, all the technical instructions. You think about it. It'd be an enormous amount of work, wouldn't it? Garden. To really know, if you know nothing and you want to start being a botanist, you'd probably have to study for many years to get your head around just a few basic rules so you can begin to manipulate the laws of the universe to get some flowers and fruits. So we can see you've got to be quite rigorous. That same level of rigor, discipline, depth of analysis is exactly what Buddha says what he demands we use to understand happiness and suffering and the causes of it and how to get rid of suffering and develop happiness. This is how he does. This is how he talks. This is not evident in many of the traditions of Buddhism. This is the way they do it in the big monastic universities in Tibet, which is coming from this big tradition, you know, of all the monastic universities in India back 1,000 years before that. So, like with botany, though, you can narrow it down to a few basic laws, couldn't you? So given that there are shops that sell you seeds, and you don't have to go and kind of get your own seeds, you know, and given that there are shops that give you decent soil and nice fertiliser, you have to learn a few basic things. That you need a seed, you need the sun, the water and the soil, and time. So it's not too difficult. You've got to get it down to those few, and then you can get a decent rose and a decent pumpkin, you know, if you want to. We can see that. But to know it really well, and to really manipulate the laws of botany, you've got to go learn genetic things and do all these genetic vegetables and transform rice into this and that and Lord knows what, like they can do now, you know, because we've got the laws down to such amazing degree. So here, in the second noble truth, Buddha's laying out two main causes of suffering. Because just like the number of causes there must be to produce a bottle, or the number of causes and conditions that you have to put together just to get a rose, then it's exactly the same with a moment of happiness or a moment of suffering. If you can say that is a phenomenon that exists and we want to try and investigate what the causes of that moment of suffering are. Why? Well, because you don't want it and you want to stop causing it. You want to stop doing it. It's very reasonable. Like with the cancer, you know. So he brings it down to two. But there'll be many, many, many causes and conditions that have to come together to produce that moment of suffering. So now, right now, what happens? Sandy punches Robina. Oh, Robina, what's wrong? What's the cause of your suffering? Sandy punched me. So as far as we're concerned, there is one cause of my suffering, and it's called Sandy. That's the law the world works according to now. It's called blame. It's called victim. And it's insane. It is demented. It's nuts, Buddha says. It's completely over-exaggerating. It's hysterical. It's hyperventilating. It's not accurate. It's absurd. But look at the world. We can deduce from the behaviour of the world that this is the philosophy of the world. We have this simplistic, absurd philosophy that says other people cause my happiness. Other people cause my suffering. So what does this give rise to? Absolute obsessive grasping at, finding, manipulating, controlling people and things to give me happiness. And then devastation and despair and anger and rage when they don't. So this is attachment and aversion, the two main neuroses. This is life. This is called samsara, Buddha says. And yes, indeed, as the gentleman points out, we are insane. Buddha would have liked that word. We all live in our own personal insane asylum. So what's interesting? You could say, you know, Buddha's baseline is perfection. Buddha's baseline is Buddhahood. And anything less than that, we are mentally ill, he is saying. But our baseline is grotesque suffering. And we think only the people who've got the punches in the nose and and starving, they're the ones who've got suffering, and I'm cool, I'm happy. But we're living mainly in the second kind of suffering. As Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, and I always quote this, to this first prisoner who ever wrote to us back in 96, when we first got a letter from a prisoner, our Liberation Prison Project. You know, we're based in San Francisco. And now a whole bunch of us work there. We've got like 6, 7 full-time workers. We get 800, 700 letters every month from people in prison. There are people who visit prisons here in the state, other states and other countries as well. And kind of this project we're growing, you know. And it began with this person, one guy, writing a letter, who read a book of Lama Yeshe's. And he was moved by the talk of compassion, this young Mexican from Los Angeles, from one of the gangs in Los Angeles, you know. Gang since he's 11, prison since he's 12, 3 life sentences, not for killing anybody, just for gang fights, you know. And now he's like 28 or something. He's in the security housing unit in Pelican Bay, one of the main, you know, top security prisons in this state. That back then even, when it was first built like 25 years ago, it was considered against human rights. They built one like this in Sydney, and they stopped it immediately. They don't have security housing units. It was against human rights, they said. Actually, it's interesting even. I'd say most of the prisons I've been to in Australia are like paradise in comparison to the prisons here. I have to say that. And recently in our newsletter we're putting out this little thing, one American who was in Adelaide, he got extradited back here to some prison in Kansas or somewhere, I can't remember where. And he was shocked by the difference. He said, he got a pencil without an eraser, and he managed to get one piece of paper, and he has no money. So he said, in Adelaide, I had my own cell, my own shower, my own, you know, bread, jam, margarine, shaving cream, razor, what else? You have television in his own cell, personal. And most of the prisons I've been to, it's like that, you know. He's in a state of a shock right now, trying to adapt to having nothing, you know. And he got $12 a week as well. All the prisoners were given $12 a week. And then we could play the guitar, he said, and we could go to the weight room, and we could go to the gym, and we could do all these different things. Actually, in Greenland, I remember reading a while ago in the Wall Street Journal that in Greenland they're seriously thinking about getting their security tighter by preventing the lifers from going out to work every day. Just imagine, amazing, isn't it? So anyway, back here, where am I? Okay, this guy who wrote to us, and this is my point about suffering, the suffering we have, okay, the we don't even think is suffering, we think we're happy. When he turned 21, I asked Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, to write him a birthday card, and he wrote him a bunch of cards actually, but basically, and I'm paraphrasing, he said to him, and this guy's in his cell 23 hours a day, when he wrote about his food, I asked him what he ate, he said, Robina, is broccoli yellow? Anyway, and I think they drink Kool-Aid. Not allowed to have hot drinks because you might tip it on your celly and burn them. So they drink Kool-Aid. They have whatever. Anyway, the food's pretty crummy, I think. I think it costs California about $50,000 a year to keep him in prison. I think the prison system's got a bigger budget than education in this state, actually. You know, I keep going off my story. So, okay, he's in his cell 23 hours a day. He has been since he's 18. He's now 29. He'll probably be there till the day he dies, until he snitches, you know, on the gangs. He won't snitch. So Lama Zopa said to him, oh yeah, more. He's in a small cell, 8 by 10, maybe smaller, I don't remember, concrete bunk, in a pod of about 16 other people. He said the noise is like being in a rock concert all day, just at 16 people. He's allowed to have one pen, the inside of a pen, the soft part, because you can use the hard part to stab your celly. He's got a television, I think, you can afford it, with earphones, I think. And there's, you know, a bit of food. And there's 10 books and a pad, I think, and that's about it, pretty much his life, 23 hours a day. And some of them in other states, you only have an exercise 3 days a week, or he gets 1 hour every day. So anyway, Lama Zopa said to him, and okay, that's what we call gross suffering, isn't it? The suffering of suffering, that's the first kind. But Lama Zopa said to him, your suffering, your prison is nothing in comparison with the inner prison of ordinary people. The prison of attachment, prison of anger, prison of depression, the prison of pride, etc., etc., etc. And that's our prison. We understand. This is the one we're in. So because in our Western world we say, oh, it is normal. We're all born this way. It's, anyway, my mother did it to me. And anyway, it's my brain. And anyway, it's my chemicals. And what can I do about it? So, of course, we take it as, we accept it as a given. We don't assume, we know if we look for half a minute, it is a nightmare. But then we feel guilty about it and we try to cover it up, you know. Or we blame other people. And because we don't have solutions, because you go to your therapist and say, can I have solutions, please, to get rid of all anger, jealousy and pride? They'll think you're wacko, give you a pill and lock you up. We know it causes us suffering, but we fiercely defend our right to have it. We think we're abnormal if we don't have it, and we have no reference points for this, let's face it. And like I was saying to Claire, even though we can find dozens of examples of ordinary people who don't have anger in the face of appalling suffering, we kind of just don't hear it. We think we think they're an aberration. We don't go, oh my God, that's amazing. How can I become like that? No, because if we have anger and the delusions, like he said, we do defend our right. We even run to them. This is the irony of ego. We're going to talk about this. We are talking about it. It's the irony of ego. So, the second kind of suffering, the suffering of change, what we call happiness. And you look at the second noble truth. Now we're getting to this, is the causes of suffering. So, as I said before, if you know, there are 27,000 things that had to come together to bring this bottle. And if you wanted to replicate that, you've got to do an awful lot of work. Same with a flower. Same with a moment of happiness. To really understand all the causes and all the conditions and all the variations intricately, to replicate that. But you can pin it down to two. You can narrow it down to two. Because these two, if we work on these two, this is the method for stopping suffering and growing our own innate potential for delight and joy and fulfillment, etc., etc. Now this is the wisdom wing, remember? Now we have the compassion wing. Because once you've got a head around this one, then you can get out there and do it to help others do the same thing, because they've got the same potential. But you've got to put yourself together first. You can't tell someone else how to be a gardener until you learn yourself. You can't tell someone else how to get happy until you can do it yourself. So what are the two main causes? Karma and delusion. Karma. The past action, 27 lives ago, last life, 40 million lives ago, doesn't matter when, because your mind is beginningless, and every single split second of what you do, say and think leaves an imprint in that mind. All the seeds are there. The past seed you sowed in your mind, that you left in there, that is now, upon meeting the particular condition called Sandy, punching me, Sandy, ripens as the punch that triggers then the second cause, which is my delusions, my anger, how dare she, who does she think she is, what right has she got, blah, 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 which then becomes the first cause of me to punch her back, which sows another seed in my mind that I don't remove, that causes me to get a punch in the future, which causes the anger to ripen again, and so this insane cycle continues. So we have to cut the cycle. The first step, the most urgent level of practice in relation to these two causes, is to at least not respond with negativity in response to the punch. At least then I protect my mind from sowing another seed for more insanity. That already is a full-on job, controlling your body, speech and mind in the face of the garbage that comes at us, you know. Or indeed in the face of all the lovely things that come. Because the logic of happiness is identical. The two causes, the main causes of happiness, are the past seed I planted in my mind that now, upon meeting the condition called Sandy, ripens as her giving me $100 and smiling at me. So because I don't think my mind has anything to do with this moment of happiness, because I'm full of attachment, I will then grasp at that and I will blame Sandy for making me happy, won't I? That's what we do. She's the cause of all my happiness. What does it cause me to do? Because I want that happiness again. I'm going to manipulate to get her to give me another $100. So I'm going to be all, you know, yucky and lovely and stroke, what do you call, pat her back. So that's attachment. So the first step in both cases is to control the neurosis that would respond to the nice action or the mean action and prevent us from getting into the victim mode. of blame. And you can effectively say we blame people for making us happy, but it's just the stuff that we like, that's all. Just the same way as blaming people for making us suffer. In other words, the logic we have in our mind now, the philosophical view we all have as a truth that we never question, that's in the bones of our being is, oh, Robina, what's the cause of happiness? Sandy being nice to me. Oh, Robina, what's the cause of suffering? Sandy being mean to me. That's the law we all live according to. We think it's the truth, which we reinforce with the view that my mind's my brain, that my mummy made me. God made me. Okay, we daren't blame God. Don't like to blame God. Italians do. If things go wrong, they say God is a pig. Our Catholic Irish ears would faint when we heard that in our house, you know. Catholic, yeah, it was shocking to blame God, but the Italians apparently do. They have these terrible ways of abusing Our Lady and our Lord. That's very naughty, isn't it? Anyway, so okay. So then let's look into this now. Let's look into these two things, see how Buddha says about suffering and happiness, or suffering. But what's interesting about the suffering one, we need to talk about that because we're trying to remove the suffering. We're trying to get happy. But it's interesting because karma, we need to remind ourselves 1,000 times a day because karma, that karma does apply to the happiness as well. But we never worry about that. We agonize, don't we? Why do bad things happen? Why September 11th? Why do bad things happen to me? And half of our, most of our anguish and distress, in my opinion, in our materialist world, is caused by not having an answer. It's fascinating, this. I find this very fascinating. We all ask the question. It's a huge question. And so we all go, we all don't know why, so therefore it makes us even more fearful. So it's a bit like this. Let's say you know nothing about botany. You've never heard of the rules called botany. And then but you have a garden. And you've made up all these stories about why you think things grow. So one day you walk out and you're smiling one day, and then suddenly a little shoot pops up. And so now you have a philosophy that says, when I smile, a shoot comes. Oh, the cause of the flowers is my smiling. So tomorrow you go out and you smile and no shoot comes. Oh, and so what are you going to do? You're going to live in fear, aren't you? Because you're not really sure you can replicate it. You don't really know if it's true or not. You think it's what you believe it's true. We believe when I get nice things, I'll get happy. But you're going to find that when you get a nice thing one day and it don't make you happy, oh my God, what happened there? So we're not really sure. It's like superstitious. So if you've got a superstitious view about why flowers come, and you're not meaning you're not accurate, then you're going to live in fear. You'll be living in fear of the flower not coming. You'll be overexcited when it does. Oh, look, it proved my point. It really does happen when I smile. Oh my God, I'm going to smile again, but it didn't come. You're going to be very superstitious. That's called superstition. You haven't got it right yet. You haven't hit the nail on the head. You haven't got the right understanding of why flowers come. But when you know the laws, and you understand how flowers come and how long they take and what you have to give it, you're not living in fear because you can replicate it all the time, and you know even if it takes 50 years you don't mind because you understand the laws. So we live in fear right now. Buddha says this is part of the crazy mind because we are not in touch with reality. We have the wackiest ideas of what we think happiness and suffering come from. And we can prove every day we don't know why. We agonize. And then the best we can get is, you know, if you get punched in the nose, the best we can do is analyse Sandy's life and find out why her parents punched her, or if they did punch her, because we're convinced that it must be that's the reason. So we analyse all of Sandy's life to see why she punched me. But excuse me, that doesn't answer why she punched me. That answers why Sandy punched. It doesn't answer why she punched me. Do you see my point here? We're trying to understand how Sandy punched, that's fine, but excuse me, where do I come into it? And then the best we can say is, oh, well, it just happens. It's just random. Oh, well, flowers are just random, you know. Just happens. They just come. No one knows why. No, well, of course you're going to live in fear if you think that about everything. Can you imagine if everything were like this? Cakes and bottles and glasses. We could have nothing. We'd be living in the dirt. Oh, well, no one knows why. Talk about superstitious. So, if every split second of whatever occurs to me, experiences, my own mind, is the result of my past actions, that's a really helpful explanation. Oh, Sandy's been kind to me. Wow, I must have been really kind once. I sowed the seed of kindness and now the fruit has ripened. Wow, how fantastic. Do I like that? Yep. I better grow more of those. Okay, I'll be kind. Thank you, Sandy. Here's $100 for you. But with attachment, which is fear, no reason why she's helping me, and I'm frantically panic-stricken, wanting happiness, frantic, not knowing how to get it, and suddenly it comes out of left field. I get $100. Oh, wow, amazing, far out, I can't believe this is incredible. What did I do to deserve this? I've got no idea. Give me more. Grass, panic. Of course you would. And then look what happens when the punches come. Oh, my God, you know. Why did this punch come? What have I done to deserve this? I mean, with the happiness one, we don't ask that question. Why do bad things happen? We want to know that. But we don't say, why do good things happen to me? We don't care why. Give me more, Sandy. So we're superstitious. We're full of fear and neurosis right now. And we think it's normal. Because we, arrogantly we think, we, clever scientists, haven't found the reasons yet, we say. Well, you know, Buddha's got a few nice answers, and a lot of people seem to have proved him right. That's up to us to find out. When Jesus has got some answers too, you know, look into them. Nothing wrong. So the two main causes of my suffering, one is the seed I planted in my mind, continuity of mind that goes back and back and back. Every split second of whatever that mind does leaves a seed in it according to the thing that you do. That's reasonable. And we're going to go into that now, discuss exactly how that functions. And then that seed stays there, and it grows like seeds do, and then it will burst forth when it meets the appropriate condition. Or the condition in this case is that mind there. That, you know, that mind and this mind have a history. So this sounds cosmic to us now, who totally believe that life is random, that no one knows why things happen, that you just meet people and no one knows why, because we don't assert a continuity of mind. Because, and the fact is, if I would agree with you, if it is true, as the materialists and the Christians say, and the Muslims, that there was nothing of Robina the second before conception. Hear my words, please. If there was nothing of Robina before the second before conception, if she was created by someone else, then I agree with you. There is no logical reason why Sandy would give me $100 if I've never met her before. And there is no logical reason why Sandy would harm me if I've never met her before. That's a fact. I accept what you're saying. There is no reason. I accept. There is no reason. So accept it. Make the most. Life's random. It's like botany. The flowers just do come with no logical reason, then you just have to accept that. One day you'll get a flower, no one knows why, and one day you won't. Well, just accept it, please. Relax, enjoy. We know there are laws about botany and everything else. That's why we're such geniuses, like I said. Well, Buddha's talking about laws of happiness and suffering here. So he says, you know, like I'm saying, my consciousness, her consciousness, go back since beginningless time. Every single split second of that mind doing, saying, thinking something leaves a seed in that mind that will necessarily ripen as a reaction in the future in that mind. We all have, and so whoever I meet, we have a history with that mind. That's what brings us together. God's not up there, or Buddha pulling the strings, making things happen. And nor is it random. They're the two options we mainly have in the world. It's random, or God's doing it. God runs the show, we think. Buddha says neither of those. No one running the show except each individual being. It's just a natural law. You don't need a person running it. So the simple logic of karma, one of them, simple logics, is happiness, which is really simply, as I said, if you look into your mind and the sense of well-being, if you look into your life, it's when the elements are harmonious and the people are friendly and sort of things work, you know, the laws of life work. You put your money in the bank and the money, you put your card in the bank, the money comes out. You put your seed in the ground and the fruit comes, you know. The rain comes at the right time. The sun comes at the right time. You go to bed, you get up in the morning, you've got a healthy body. This is just life, what we call ordinary, comfortable life. That's what we call happiness in a conventional sense, and reasonable enough, that's conventionally speaking. It's the fruit, Buddha says, of virtue. Buddha says there's a natural, organic relationship between what's called happiness, which is really a word for when everything just works nicely and harmoniously in your own mind, your own body, and in your own life. That's happiness. There's a natural relationship between that and goodness. So goodness in the past, positive states of mind, positive actions, leave a seed in the mind that will ripen in the future as pleasant experiences. There's a natural relationship, he says, between unhappiness, which is when things go wrong, when people punch you in the nose and the garden floods and the house falls down and the elements don't work and your body gets sick and your mind's crazy. That's called suffering. Well, there's a natural relationship between that and negative seeds in your mind that you planted in the past when you did harmful things or negative things, things based upon neurosis. And we're going to go into details on these things. So there's a natural law, Buddha says. My mother used to say, virtue has its own rewards. Well, that's what Buddha's saying. You don't need a person to tell you you're a good person, which is how we think now. We think of goodness and badness as punishment and reward, the dualistic view. This is what our religions are based on. This is what our daily, ordinary physical world is based on, punishment and reward, you know. No such concept in Buddhism. It's a natural law. So the past seed I planted by doing a negative action in relation to that mind, because karma is personal. And again, we're talking simplistically here, the simple principles. If you want to get, as I said, more detailed about botany, it's going to be quite complex, isn't it, the genetics of it all? Well, indeed, here there's got the same complexity, highly complex. We're talking simple principles here, to get our head around it, that's all, as a starting point. The seed in my mind that I planted ripens in my mind, in my life, as a certain experience, called suffering, if it's a negative seed. And if it's happiness, it's the result, the cause of it was my own positive state of mind, positive action of my body, speech and mind. So therefore one of the simple principles of karma is, like your garden, if the weed is there, you must have planted the seed. Not like, oops, how dare my neighbour put a seed in his ground and I get a weed. Not like that. Or, who put a weed in my garden? By definition, remember, it's just the analogy, if it's your garden, it's your life. So, you know, it's yours. If you meet it, it's yours. If it occurs in your mind, it's yours. If a person punches you, it's your punch. If that rat eats your house, it's your rat. If, you know, that person gives you $1 million, that's your million, you know, that's your karma. Everything is your stuff. And it's not meant to be cosmic. It is cosmic for us if we don't have this as a law. If we think it's random and that God does it and Mummy does it and Daddy does it and it's genes and all this, then this is a cosmic concept. But this is Buddha's deal. This is what he's been saying for however long, and people living according to these laws, you know, and replicating it every time and getting the result. So karma ripens, you could say. The seeds you plant in the past ripen in the present in 4 main ways. And indeed, the seeds we plant now ripen in the future in 4 main ways, whichever way you want to look at it. So if we look into our lives now, what time is dinner? Oh, we're okay. I didn't give you a break. I'm so sorry. You okay? All right. So then, okay, if you look into your life now, you can divide the whole life into 4 ways that your karma has ripened in the past. And they're all different, 4 different tracks, if you like, of karma. Right? Okay, so the first one is the realm, as the Buddha would call it, the realm of existence that you get born into. So we'll step back for a second here. Remember we were saying that Buddha would say there's not an atom of space where you won't find minds. Under your armpit, in your gut, in your mouth, in the air, you know, everywhere. All kinds of beings. And they're just the ones we can see with a microscope. So the Buddha would say there's a whole spectrum of possibilities, of types of rebirth, as they call it. Realms. Sort of like dimensions, like we say in science fiction, you know. Okay, broadly speaking, all minds in the universe you can divide into 2. The term they use for certain ones is superior being. It's interesting. We use that in Christianity, but there's only one. It's called God, isn't it? Well, Buddha uses the term, Arya. Hitler misused this term, you know, Aryan thing. Superior being. From the first second of your removing from your mind the root seed of suffering, and they call that one ignorance, and we're going to go into all this. From that split second in your progression, you know, on your path, you become a superior being. You climb out of samsara and you're into nirvana. And now you keep progressing until eventually you've perfected your mind, called Buddhahood, you know. So there's all the superior beings. Then you've got the rest, who are ordinary beings, or the word samsaric beings. And that's us, you know, you can say. And then you can divide those broadly, well, actually into different kind of groupings of types of realms. And so one grouping is called the desire realm, and that's divided into 6, and we're in that lot. So there's a whole spectrum within that of types of minds. realms of existence, or dimensions, as I said. The first one, the top, like the top end, the best suburbs, if you like. Buddhists call it the God realms as a couple. Well, Muslims call it paradise. Christians call it heaven. They would say it's the end result. The Buddha says no, it's still in samsara. You haven't finished yet, and it's the fruit of immense virtue, because virtue just naturally produces happiness. The more virtue, the more happiness. It's just natural relationship, not punishment, not reward, like I'm saying. It's an inexorable result. Because positive states of mind, virtue, remember, are not the neuroses. So therefore they're not disturbing and they're not delusional. So they can only produce more pleasing experiences in the mind of harmony and peace and happiness and contentment. So the God realms, the minds are super blissful. This type of minds last a long time in that experience. They've got the physical energy too, but it's subtle light bodies they talk about. We've got this, remember we talked about the subtle wind energy at the time when you die, coming along with a very subtle consciousness. Well, if this amount of virtue can manifest as this blissful experience, but it's a bit of a useless rebirth actually. Because you're so blissed out, they say, you don't realise you've still got delusions in your mind, but they haven't manifested any gross suffering. You've got none of the gross kind of suffering. Not the gross kind, but you have the suffering of change, because eventually it finishes. So then you've got the human realm. And this is also, broadly speaking, the result of virtuous karma. So the way this works is this, roughly speaking, okay? If we can track our mind back, and we did have perfect memory, from the time of conception in our present mother's womb, we could track our consciousness back not more than a few weeks, Buddha would say, even could be just a minute or two, before it was in a previous form of one kind or another. So simply speaking, again, let's just say we were in a human body, just say, at the time of death, we can deduce from the fact that we are human now, that our mind went into our human mummy's womb, we can deduce that very strong particular karma of habit of virtue, of morality, in particular the morality of non-harming, even more specifically the morality of non-killing. Strong habit of that in that life, probably practiced in the context of a spiritual path. Probably practiced in the context of keeping vows of morality. The habit in the past life of you've trained yourself in morality. So why you're good at piano today is because you've trained yourself yesterday. Why you're good at virtue and kindness is because you've trained yourself in that. So you die with that deep habit, and that particular karma ripens like a seed at the time of your past death that then throws your consciousness, they call that the throwing karma, on autopilot when it leaves that body and finds its way inexorably, it's not random, into our present mother's human womb. Now, one Lama said that at the time of a male and female human being having sex, billions of consciousnesses who have just recently passed away. Now, obviously, we have to deduce here, it can't just be from the human realm because there aren't that many. Billions of consciousnesses that have recently been in a previous life are all kind of hovering around, desperate to get in. It sounds really intense, doesn't it? And of course, again, if you think your mind is your brain, this is pretty cosmic, I agree with you. So the first karma that has ripened for us is in our being a human. This alone is sort of fascinating, because Buddha's saying our past virtue, our accumulation of an immense amount of morality in the past, practice in the context of a spiritual path, is the main cause of my getting a human life. Just getting a human life. And if you look at the possibilities of non-human lives, and they're all minds in Buddha's terms, my God, we did win the lottery. I mean, I remember watching on one of those animal shows, one whale in one ocean opened its mouth for one mouthful of one day's breakfast, and 40 million beings went in. That's a lot of sentient beings. Humans at best might have half a dozen or 2 or 3 in one life, you know. Some of these little slugs under the earth, you know, some of them are just like these baby machines, aren't they? This big mummy slug, you know, this big queen mummy, and all the little busy ones. If they want in one end, they stub in an egg, and the other end a baby comes out. They have millions in a life. That's one little baby slug. One. Think how many there must be. They're all minds. They're all sentient beings who, due to karma, run like a magnet to that little egg when we ran like a magnet to our mummy's womb. So not being rude about people and little insects and slugs, but not much you can say answering the business about the ant. You got Buddha nature. What can you do as a slug underneath the earth? Not much. Your karma hasn't ripened. Talk about tone deaf. Your karma's there. All the seeds are there from your past morality, but the one that ripened at the time of that death was negativity that causes profound ignorance, profound suffering. Or the mind that is maybe the habit of killing in the past. Now, I'm not talking about killing humans. I'm talking about killing, anything. Buddha would say, don't kill anything. Killing is a heavy-duty action. We're going to, talking about all this. I think we need an extra day. There's no time. What to do? Okay, I better talk faster. Okay. If I were Lama Zopa, I'd keep you up until 3 in the morning, but I value my reputation much too much. I want you to love me, you see. So, okay. So, if killing karma in the past ripens as a main habit, and that's the one you've practiced, and you've never bothered to look at your mind in that life, and you kind of, you bad-mouth the next-door neighbour, and you're mean about your husband, and you sleep with your husband's best friend, and you kind of lie about this, and you kill the rats and roaches. You're just an ordinary person, okay, not like Hitler. Well, you've never looked at your mind. You haven't practiced virtue. You just followed your own instincts. Your little baby negative ones. That's your habit, especially the killing, which is most intense. Then that's going to ripen at the time of your death. And your mind will run to a lion mummy's womb, and you'll find that super attractive. You run like a magnet to that. So you get born with claws, and a big furry body, and a mind that goes with it. A killing mind. That's all it knows. Habit. So the first way our karma ripens is the seed that ripens at the time of the death, the main one. That's the throwing karma that throws our consciousness into an appropriate type of birth. So we won the lottery, we got a human life. But that's just the beginning. Hitler had one of them, and so did Mother Teresa. So where's the difference? Well, this is the second track of karma. This is how come they're different. They both got noses and eyes and toenails, speak words, eat food. But where's the difference? Obvious. It's in their mind, isn't it? Their characteristics, their tendencies, their goodness and badness, their tendencies, their habits. Whether it's Mozart being good at music or Hitler being good at killing, it's a habit. That's all. It's a habit. And you have a habit is something you've done before that you're good at. That's all. Nothing special. So Hitler came fully programmed from the first moment of conception with all the tendencies that he then expressed in his life. Mother Teresa and us, the slug, the lion, every sentient being. So one karma is the one that determines the form you take, the realm you take, which gives you the capacity of their mind. So we then then at the same time that the karma ripened at the time of your death, the past death, that triggered a bunch of other seeds, which will become the seeds for your tendencies in this life. So you come fully programmed with the Claire-ness, the Rachel-ness, the Robina-ness, the tendencies you have. Whether you've got the tendency like poor old BTK to torture and kill, or had the tendency like Hitler to do what he did, or Mother Teresa to do what she did, or we to do what we do, the tendencies are there. The tendencies are ours. Mummy did not give them to us. The music, the anger, the love, the intelligence, do not come from our parents. They are our own mind. But we indeed created the karma to get born to a mummy who is good at music, to get born to a mummy who's good at killing, to get born to a mummy who is, intelligent or angry. Of course, it's part of the deal. Because this is the third kind of karma. This now brings us to the third track of our karmic imprints, how they ripen in the present. And so the first one is called the karma that ripens, the seed that ripens is called the throwing karma. When it ripens, it's called the fruit, it's called the fully ripened result. The fully ripened result. It's sort of like the apple. And then you've got the way the apple is a poor apple and a miserable apple and a lonely apple, you understand? And then you've got the other karma, which is called the actions similar to the cause, the characteristics of the apple itself. Some apples are really weak, aren't they? Some are very sour, some are sweet. You get my point here? There's the appleness, which is the fully ripened result. Then there's the character of the apple. Bursting with bloom and life, a delicious, sweet, wonderful apple. Little miserable old dried up apple. You get my point here? Your personality. That's called actions similar to the cause. Your tendencies, your character, your personality. Right? Okay? The third one is called experiences similar to the cause. And this is all the stuff that happens to you. The stuff from out there. The kind of mother you get, the kind of father, the place you're born, where you live, the house, whether it's stinky or nice. No, that's more environmental karma. The way you are seen by others, the way you are treated by others, the people who are connected to you, whether you're lonely, whether you're living on the street, whether people lie to you, steal from you, whether you're thrown in prison without doing something wrong, whether you're not thrown in prison, whether you did something wrong. Whatever it is that happens to you, how you are seen by others, every single tiny fraction of a second of any of this is also the fruit of actions you did like that. The fruit is always similar to the seed. The seed is the cause of a certain kind of fruit. This is why it's interesting with our friends in prison. You know, you say, oh, I went to prison because I killed somebody. Well, that's not the cause of it, karmically, no. It's a cooperative cause. Because if killing is the cause of going to prison, everybody who kills would go to prison. Clearly they don't. There are plenty of maniacs living out in the world, you know, who don't get to prison. And there are many people who were innocent who go to prison. This is for sure. So the karmic cause of being imprisoned, all you've got to do is look at the experience. So, you know, you'd characterise the experience of being in prison as having your freedom taken away. You know, you're the bottom rung of society. No one likes you. They want you to stay there and suffer. You're seen as bad. You're painted with that brush of that one action. You're a bad person. You have a lousy reputation. You get my point here? No one trusts you. But your freedom is curtailed hugely. Well, look at those experiences and then try and deduce what will be the cause of those experiences. Actions similar to that. That's the cause of being imprisoned. Taking people's freedom away, misusing, being arrogant, using people as servants or slaves, you know. Because whatever way we are seen by others is due to the past karma. It's called experiences similar to the cause. And we can see very clearly, this is why good things happen to bad people and why bad things happen to good people. Because the tendencies in you is one track of karma, and then how you're seen and treated is another track of karma. And we have the usual kind of deduction, oh, if I steal, I will get stolen from in this life. Not true. Lots of people steal and just keep making more money. Lots of people don't steal but get stolen from. They're two separate tracks of karma. People might believe your words, even if you're lying. When I was a little girl, always a smarty pants, always giving the right answer, you know, thinking I was giving the right, first wanted to say the right answer. And one time I said the wrong, I knew I was lying. Everyone believed me. I remember thinking I better be careful with my words if people are going to believe lies, you know. So that means I had the karma to be believed. You get my point here. You know what it's like when you're telling the truth and no one believes you. It's terrifying. But it's the truth and you can see they just don't believe you. So these don't have a relationship necessarily. How you are now and what happens to you. They're two separate tracks, you know. So the fourth one is called environmental karma. It doesn't just mean the moon and the stars and the water. It means your very environment you live in. You can say right now, today, in this room, we are experiencing good environmental karma, meaning the very ground we live on and the house we're in is pleasing, you know, it's kind of comfortable and pleasing. If you're here in the middle, well, it's the middle of summer, but it's not so hot. Sometimes when it's a very hot day, it's suffocating in here, you know. So whatever you experience with the environment, if the water's polluted, that's a collective karma we have, isn't it? And that's from past killing, that the very environment that should nourish you, because it's what we live in, isn't it? It's interdependent. I'm part of the environment, and if part of my environment harms me, the sun's too hot, the snow is too cold, the water poisons me, the peanuts kill me, the milk, you know, gives me a rash. This is the result of negative karma. But when like now, harmonious, it's harmonious and pleasing. That's the collective result of our past collective virtue. Everything, Buddha says. This is the law that Buddha says determines the universe. This is the law that runs the universe, Buddha says. No one made it up. He didn't invent it. How rude of him. He doesn't make it happen. And there's a big difference. I mean, the point of God is that he does make it happen. That is the view in Christian teachings and Muslim teachings. He does run the show. He did create everything. Buddha absolutely says this is not how it is. Don't believe him. He's not being rude. He's allowed to say what he likes. It's up to you to prove who's right. So it's the entire environment, the way you impact upon your, or the way it impacts upon you. That includes your body, your health, all the stuff that happens to you, all your own tendencies, and the very fact of your being a human being. Now, Buddha says you are the main cause. Your past actions are the main cause of all of that. Now, I think that's quite encouraging. Thank you very much. Wow. You mean I'm the boss? I always wanted to be the boss. But what's the implication? It's the best part. I can change. That's it. I'm not a victim. I did it, so I can change. If I'm the cause of what I am, I can be the cause of what I can become. But if Mummy did it, and Frankenstein did it, and God did it, and they did it, and he did it, and she did it, then of course I'm going to be freaking out, standing here like an insane victim. Oh my God. Panic-stricken the whole time, impotent, going crazy, blaming, or guilt. This is our mode. Insanity. This is action. This is proactive, you know. Get on with it. Change. So 4 ways your karma ripens, you can say. Different fundamental little principles of karma, again. One is that if the fruit is there, honey, you sowed the seed. If you sow the seed, honey, you will get the fruit, unless you pull it out. That's kind of a powerful one, right there. 2, if it's a weed, it's a fruit of a negative karma. If it's a flower, it's a fruit of virtuous karma. Not punishment, not reward, a natural law, Buddha says. So given that I do want the flowers and don't want the weeds, sure, okay, more advanced teachers can tell us how we can use the weeds, that's skillful, but like fundamentally speaking, simply here using this as the analogy, we want the happiness and we don't want the suffering. Given that, and given that the happiness is a result of my virtue and the suffering is a result of my non-virtue, conclusion, I better pull out the non-virtuous ones before they ripen and start growing the good ones. It's a very simple logical deduction. And then the seeds I plant in the past ripen first in terms of the type of form I have, human, dog, whatever. Second, my personality, my tendencies, my characteristics, my traits, you know. Goodness and badness are all tendencies that I brought with me in my mind. My mummy might have the same ones, no problem. So by her being that way just increases mine. Of course it does. You know, she activates mine. Or my father abusing me, which he did. That activated my anger and my suffering. Yep, no problem. But due to past karma with my father, you know, I get born to him as his daughter and he harms me. So I must have harmed him. That's okay. Due to his being angry, it triggered my anger, which is mine. So, you know, he was angry, I got angry, it reinforced my anger. Great, we all just help out, you know, we move ourselves along there, you know. The goodness of my mother, she taught me music, you know. She had music inside her, I had music inside her, I ran to that mummy, I got that mummy, you know. So she taught me that, she helped me learn to develop that part of me. My father abusing me helped me develop that part of me, the anger part, you know. That's the way to say it. All the time, like with the music, like whatever, it's a tendency in my mind. It's in my mind. I mean, mind is not physical. Doesn't come from God or Buddha. Is mind. Goes back and back and back. This is the hypothesis. Because if we can't hypothesize this about the mind, this karmic one is a complete load of rubbish. It's a complete load of insane nonsense. Just leave it alone. Don't waste your time. So you've got to hypothesize the mind being that in order to fit the karmic one in. You have to. You can't run with it if you don't do this. So tonight, I want to go more about karma after this class, after dinner, yeah. We'll go into how we create karma and how we purify it. That's what we'll do. Will many of you not be here tonight? Oh, okay, you will be here, good. All right, so we can do that then. So let's stop now. Unless you have any urgent questions before we have dinner. Any urgent, pressing questions that prevent you from enjoying your dinner? No, okay, good. So then, go, darling, go. Yes.
Whenever a partner ripens,
yes.
either negative or positive,
Yes.
is it always with the same person that the interaction happens?
Well, I understand. It is unbelievably complex, like you can just talk about, botany. But in general, there's no being you meet whom you haven't met before. In fact, your being together in the past is the main propeller of why you come together. And that means you have a connection with that experience together. That's why you come together in that experience. So in that sense, it's totally personal. Those Palestinians and Israelis, there's no way that's not personal. They both all of them run like magnets to that piece of earth, where they've got that history together. So generally speaking, yes, the stuff that we have with family and people and friends and that rat in your house, there's personal karmic connection there. You come together, that rat and you join together in that piece of property. It's not random. He's got karma, that rat's got karma with that earth, so have you. And he thinks it's his house just like you think it's yours. It's your rat, honey. You understand? One time I remember when in our retreat centre near Big Sur, there were a bunch of monks and nuns there doing lifelong retreat. And one of the nuns, her house was overrun by moths. Moths, you guys say, don't you? Moths. Then you say moths, don't you? You say? Oh, moths. Okay. Moths. Okay. Overrun by moths. So anyway, the point is, hundreds of them, right? And she spent weeks, one moth at a time, getting a jar, getting it, saying a mantra on it, releasing it. Weeks, right? And as Lama Zopa said, when he heard about it, he said, incredible. Repaying such a karmic debt. Unbelievable. Repaying such a karmic debt. So yeah, karma's personal. Generally speaking, karma's personal. Yes, sweetie pie, go.
I will not be here this evening.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Okay, so go on.
So I've been really trying to sit with where adoption comes into all of this.
Yeah, okay, good.
And so
Absolutely.
I thought it through and
Good.
thought, well,
Tell
there's
us what
no
you think.
connection because
Tell us what you think.
Well, and so I got myself confused after something you said.
Okay, go.
Back again.
Good, darling, go.
But so the soul of the consciousness comes.
The consciousness, yeah, Buddha would say, yeah.
Yeah, so we flock to the mom that we want or that may have.
Due to past karmic connection, the usual old-fashioned way of getting born is, you mummy and daddy do their thing, don't they? But there can be other ways, can't there? Like, a friend of mine, a lesbian in Seattle, asked a gay friend of hers to stick some sperm. So he squirted some sperm into a bottle. Then she got a big fat syringe because she was a nurse, and she squirted the sperm into her body, and she got a very nice daughter. Well, that's another way of getting born. Another way of connecting two consciousnesses together, isn't it? Well, the third way is you look up the book and oh, there's a nice baby, I'll buy that one. Well, it's just karmic connection, isn't it? The same as meeting the person you fall in love with. It's a karmic connection. And that's a deeper one than blood. We call it blood, don't we? But it's just karmic connection with people. That's all it is. Do you see? Does that fit? Yeah. Okay. Oh, there you go. Okay. So let's think differently about our dinner. Okay, your dinner's not just a bunch of carrots out there and beans and this and that and rice and bread and I like this and I don't like that, shove in the mouth, or not, as the case may be. It just completely has no inherent nature. It's just from eons of habit we label it this way, because of attachment. We see it as delicious and divine, or aversion we see it as ugly, whatever. So it has no inherent nature. Don't get too caught up. So before we shove it in the mouth, we think it's empty, therefore, of having an inherent nature. And we're going to talk about this. And so we now imagine it as just, play with your mind for a second, imagine it as oceans of nectar in the sky. And then we bless it with Om Ahung, Om Ahung, Om Ahung. And we imagine your heart wanting to offer it to all the starving beings, all the suffering creatures, all the little slugs, all the 40 million little creatures who went into the whale's mouth for breakfast, all the whales, all the beings who are slaughtering each other in the animal realm, all the humans, all the crazy humans and the nice humans and the starving humans, and all the holy ones, the one who have done the job, the superior beings, how fantastic, who are showing us the way. All of them, we imagine all of them experiencing the delight of receiving this food. And that if we could, we would offer it to all beings, just thinking like this. And imagine them, enjoying. Lama Sangye Lama Cho, Dejin Lama Gedon Te, Kungi Jepo, Lama Te, Lama Namla Cho Pabo. And then just thinking like that for 1 minute. Unbelievable. Huge in your mind, these marvellous seeds you just planted, because every thought sows a seed. And seeds bring fruits similar to the thoughts. How fantastic. So easy. So now you enjoy your dinner. Have fun. Talk about things. And what time is session again? 7:30? 7. Oh, is an hour enough? Do you think 7:30 is better? What would you prefer?